So since President Biden took office back in January 2021, his administration has really stepped up for K through 12 schools. They've given them a whopping $122 billion through the U.S. Department of Ed, which is a big deal because it's way more than what schools usually get from the federal government in a typical year. And we know that was done to help students bounce back from the academic challenges brought on by the pandemic. We also know that Secretary Cardona is hard at work in the education department, but we know it's voters with student debt or those seeking educational attainment who will want to know what the administration has done for them. Can you summarize the administration's actions on student debt relief, including debt cancellation, relief amounts, Pell Grants, and the repayment plan?
I love that question because it's so critical. It's so important. And thank you, Nehemiah and Dion, for this opportunity. Look, the president has always been very, very clear. He believes that when it comes to, especially to student debt, he believes that Americans should be able to get an education, but not be choked by and not be choked by the repaying that education, right? They should be able to do that in a way where they can still achieve whatever dream, whatever career that they want to achieve. And he has been very explicit. You actually hear him talk about that very often in the past 2 years. And that's why he's taking his student debt relief program so seriously. When he put that forth, he did it because he understood what young people were going through, and not just young people, just Americans who have come out of getting higher education, what they've had to deal with. And even when that was knocked down by the Supreme Court, he's kept his commitment. To your point, to the way you're asking me the question, he kept his commitment to continue to make sure that he did everything that he can to give Americans a little bit of breathing room. You hear him say that often. So canceled over $117 billion in student debt for more than about 3.4 million borrowers. So that's really important. Launched a repayment plan to lower monthly payments for borrowers who will see their lifetime payments per dollar borrowed out in half, and also provided up to $10,000 in debt relief to all eligible borrowers, and up to $20,000 for borrowers who receive Pell Grants. So these are the things that, and there's more, there's a lot more. These are the things that the president has taken action, obviously through the Department of Education here. He takes this really seriously. He always talks about his wife, right? The First Lady, Dr. Biden, who's an educator. So he understands what teachers go through, what students go through in trying to just get that best education. And you even go back to the first piece of legislation that he passed, which is the American Rescue Plan, that only had Democrats voting on that plan, which is now law. It was done because at a time when he walked in, COVID, the pandemic had taken over our lives. Schools were closed, small businesses were closed, and it was a devastating time economically for Americans and for the world, if we're going to be very honest here. And the American Rescue Plan helped people get back on their feet, but they helped open up schools, help provide programs so that students can actually transition back into school in a healthier way, whether it's providing, some sort of like mental, emotional program so that they can actually deal with what they had to deal with during the COVID times, making sure that they are getting the best education that we can possibly give them. There's always a lot more work to do, and we understand that, but it is a priority for this president.
And thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. We definitely really appreciate it. For me, my question, for those who may not follow politics and every decision, every law that's passed, can you talk specifically about the action that the President Biden has taken on police reform, marijuana reform, and community violence intervention programs?
So, and that's such a great question, because that is something, as you know, when the president was running in 2020, that was the thing that we're talking about, young people, right? That was the number one thing that young people wanted us to deal with, which after what we saw with George Floyd, that horrible video that all of us in this country watched, and it crushed us. It crushed to see what was happening. And that was caught on tape, right? That is something that we saw ourselves that was caught on tape. And so a couple of things that I want to list out. And the president took this very seriously when it comes to making sure that our community feels safe, brown and Black communities feel safe, but also to make sure that that we, while we feel safe, but that we have a relationship with local police officers that works in a way that we all feel protected, right? And so banning chokeholds was something that he worked on the federal level, did an executive order to make sure that that was done, restrict no-knock warrants. I'm just going to list a couple of things: mandate the use of body-worn cameras, implement stronger use of force policies, provide de-escalation training, submit use of force data to the FBI's use of force data collection, submit officer misconduct records into a new national database, which is something that Department of Justice is under the Department of Justice, obviously, and restrict the transfer of military equipment to local law enforcement agencies. These are things that many young people were fighting for and asking for some change. And that's what the president was able to do in executive order on the federal level, that he was able to do there. Of course, we need Congress to act so that we can turn this into legislation, which will have an effect, obviously a more broad effect. But this is something that the president really believes. He believes that all communities should be safe, should feel like they're protected in a safe way. And so, this is something that the president's going to continue to call on.
You've listed over a dozen accomplishments President Biden has made, from overseeing the lowest Black unemployment in recent history to unprecedented funding for HBCUs and things of that nature. When you look at some of the recent polling, not all, but some of the recent polling, there seems to be a disconnect between Biden's policy wins and voter approval, voter support. Can you talk about why you believe that is?
So look, we're going to continue to do the work and talk to the American people. I think that's why having this conversation with you, Dion, and Nehemiah is so important. Talking to Black Wall Street Times is so important, right? Hearing directly from the administration to talk about and take this opportunity, and we appreciate this opportunity to lay out what the president has done, not just for the Black community, but for Americans across the country, and how his focus every day, day in and day out, is to make sure that we deliver on what the president was elected to do. And so we're going to talk about it more. We're going to continue to have these kind of conversations more. We're going to try and break through the noise. It's very hard to break through the noise that we're seeing right now, right? In the politics noise, there's so much happening. And so we're going to continue to push our message forward on how the president wants to make sure that people have a little bit more breathing room. He wants to make sure that people have that dignity to be able to make those choices, to pay for important items for their family so that their family can thrive. They can thrive in their own careers and in their own lives. So I think we're just going to continue to have those conversations. We're going to continue to hear more from the president, going into states, speaking directly to the American people. But it is very hard to cut through the noise nowadays. There's so much happening, whether it's social media, whether it's cable, whether it's network TV. There's just so much noise. And so we're going to do our best to have these important conversations that I'm having with both of you today.